celebrar aquestes jornades entorn del que hem anomenat el cos, la veu i l'altre. Ahir ja vam tenir la primera sessió a l'Ateneu barcelonès amb una conferència sobre la veu, que va ser molt interessant i que certament segur que encara hi ha preguntes que després de dormir una nit emergeixen. És a dir, que podem continuar avui també la discussió que vam endegar ahir. Però la proposta per avui té també un altre format, és més aviat un format seminari, per això alguns de nosaltres ja hem pogut llegir legalment el tercer capítol de No està en la cultura de Freud, perquè és el text del qual faig la lectura avui. I el tema que havíem anunciat era aquest Between the One and the Two, Body and Alterity, i s'abordarà potser no de manera tan explícita com es plantejava en el títol, però sí també entrar en la qüestió de l'alteritat i del cos, que d'alguna manera és el que també ens convoca. Aquestes jornades estan organitzades per PIS, Psicoanàlisi i Societat, el Departament de Filosofia de Barcelona i per Coordinació, i d'alguna manera són els interessos d'aquests tres grups que coincideixen aquí. No cal, em sembla, que presenti el professor Mladen Dolar, però igualment sí que és important dir que és professor a la Universitat de Ljubljana i és cofundador de la Ljubljana School of Psychoanalisis. És autor de diversos llibres, en tenim un de traduït al castellà, Una voz y nada más, a Manantial, a Buenos Aires, el 2007. I és autor i editor amb Slavoj Žižek d'obres de crítica de biologia i cultures contemporànies i és, com sabeu, un referent del pensament contemporani. Very welcome and thank you very much for sharing with us your knowledge and your time. And the word is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. To start with, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'll be talking about a central question in psychoanalysis, which is the relation between drives and culture. And this is like a seminar format. I have a paper, but I'll be speaking more freely, and you are free to interrupt me. Or if there is a question of understanding, my English tends to be a bit complicated at times. If you want me to explain something on the way, that's fine. So, the culture and the drives seem to be at opposite ends. There seems to be a relation of opposition, because drives appear to be the enemies of culture. So this is the spontaneous understanding that one has of those two words. The drives are more on the side of the somatic, the bodily, the side of nature, as it were, of the natural impulses. And the culture is the opposite of that. The culture is supposed to mold and contain the drives. And there is how to say drive in Spanish? What is that?
Pulsión.
Pulsión. This is fine, because in English a lot of confusion was caused by standard edition. I mean, standard edition, which is excellent translation to English, very straight. But he systematically translated Freud's word, the trieb, with instinct. And the moment you say instinct, you are on the side of animality. And you have some other supposition that this is the animal part of man, somehow. Yes.
This mistake he's talking about, the translation of trieb into instinct, was reproduced in the Spanish edition by Biblioteca Nueva. So after, many years after, there's a second edition by José Luis Echeverri, which has a more proper translation, and he used pulsión there instead of instinct. So in Spanish you have the same problem.
Yeah, pulsion.
We inherited the problem.
No, also in French, pulsion, this is fine. This is also etymologically what the Freudian word in German means, treiben, trieb. So drive and pulsion. This is fine, as the word goes. So I'll be starting with Freud's text, Civilization, Its Discontents, which was written in 1929, published in late 1929, 1930. And if you look at the title of this paper, book, it's a booklet, there seems to be a script implied in it. Like civilization and its contents means we don't feel well in culture. We are not happy in culture. And actually the first title that Freud proposed was Das Unglück in der Kultur, the unhappiness in culture. We're not happy in culture. Culture doesn't make us happy. Why doesn't it make us happy? Because it makes us renounce our drives. So in order to enter into culture, there's a structural problem, and we have to renounce our drives to be sort of cultural beings. Culture imposes on our drives. And Freud, already the title implies a certain script. Freud many times somehow goes into the direction of supporting this script. And I quote from his earlier text. The first time he introduced the notion of the drive was in the 3 Essays on the Theory of Sexuality, 1905. And there, for instance, he says that there is an inverse relation holding between civilization and the free development of sexuality. So, the more developed civilization, the less you have the free development of sexuality. There's an inverse relation. And there is also this idea was expounded in something in the text called civilized sexual morality and modern nervous illness. So, the moment we have civilized sexual morality, we produce the nervous illness. So, this is a sort of spontaneous understanding of these two terms, culture and rights. And in this paper, what I will try to do is to dismount, to deconstruct this opposition, to show that in psychoanalysis everything depends on seeing that it can't be so. This is not the way to conceive things. It's not the way to conceive things. That the relation between culture and drives is far more convoluted. The one reaches into the other. And we have to consider this area of the overlap between the two. So, Freud is at some point in this book says, das Leben, wie es uns auferlegt ist, ist zu schwer für uns. This kind of strange sentence. Life as we find it is too hard for us. It's great. It brings us too many pains, disappointments, and impossibilities. So, life is too much for us. Life is more than we can bear. And the literal translation is, the life such as it is imposed on us. So life is an imposition. And I will just insist on this, I will insist on the notion of too muchness. And I don't know if you know the work of Eric Sandner, he's a Chicago, good friend in Chicago, he's published a number of books. And he says in one of his books, which is an excellent book, on the psychotheology of everyday life, it's called. And there he has this sentence where he tries to define psychoanalysis, what psychoanalysis is about in one single sentence. And I quote this: psychoanalysis differs from other approaches to human being by attending to the constitutive too-muchness that characterizes the psyche. The human mind is, we might say, defined by the fact that it includes more reality than it can contain. So there's a too-muchness, there's too much pressure. Life is too much, more than we can bear. Life is not made by human measure. So there's a pressure, there's an excess, and he says when he measures the senses, this is not merely physiological. This is not a question of the surplus of physiological drives that would account for this excess. But basically, this is what psychoanalysis is about. There's an excess. There's an excess we cannot place, we cannot easily deal with. Well, if you read that, I suggest that you maybe read the third section of this booklet. You can see that Freud starts from some sort of general suppositions or everyday assumptions rather than from concepts. And he is sometimes on the verge of what one would call coffee house philosophy. You know, Vienna is famously the city of cafes, and there are so many philosophers in every cafe considering the sort of the fate of the universe and the fate of human life. So this is a term in German, the coffee house philosophy. It's sort of easy wisdoms, easy general wisdoms. And sometimes it seems that Freud is kind of on the verge of this. But you can see, you see that starting from the commonplace, the general assumptions, the things very quickly get very complicated. So why is it that the life is too much for us? Because there is the reality principle, which is at odds with pleasure principle. Pleasure principle guides our psyche. Its position is that the psyche would spontaneously seek more pleasure, and it's confronted by harsh reality, and reality is presented by nature that we can't master, is presented by our bodies that are fragile, vulnerable, and mortal. I follow Freud's argument. And in particular, this reality principle is presented by fellow human beings with whom we cannot arrive to a coexistence. And the part of nature and the part of our mortal and vulnerable bodies, this is something we can't quite do away with. But the trouble is that the main source of our discontent in culture is actually the arrangement, the social arrangement with fellow human beings, which we can never quite arrange to our own benefit. And Freud comes to this, that the principal culprit for our misery is our so-called culture. So the culture itself, the culture, which is an arrangement which we produced ourselves, is something which is the principal culprit for our misery. The source of misery is what makes us human, the very instrument against suffering and dependence on nature. So every cultural progress produces ever more trouble, and then this trouble is supposed to be cured by ever more progress of culture. So seen in this light, culture is a sort of self-referential project. It ultimately serves attending, assuaging the troubles that it itself produces. The more there is culture, the more we need to attend to the troubles that culture itself produces. So the paradox is this: if culture or civilization, and Freud says, not in this text, but another one, he says, I scorn to distinguish between culture and civilization. So let's not go into this. These two words don't mean the same thing. So there will be an interesting debate, what is the difference between the two, but Freud somehow takes them in one go. So the paradox is this, that if culture is an attempt to master nature, then it itself produces something which is more intractable than nature. So culture itself is more intractable than the forces of nature it is supposed to take. So I will ask this very large question and follow Freud's steps. What is culture? Like, if we say culture, we say civilization, what exactly do we mean? What are the most general traits? And I will spell this out, following Freud's steps. This in 6 points. 6 basic traits of culture. And the first and most obvious self-evident trait is that culture is progressive mastering of natural forces. And the starting point of culture is the use of tools, at first control over fire, construction of dwellings, and more complex tools. And this is the germ, the use of tools is the germ of the gigantic progress, which is based on tools as an elongation or expansion of the human body. The expansion of the limits of the human body. So the machines prolong the muscles, the microscope, the telescope prolong our eyes, this photography, gramophone, stack and stop the time, computer prolongs the brain, ships and planes conquer distances. So human body, if it is equipped with all these gadgets, is extended to enormous proportion. So at some point Freud says science is the ultimate fact. It is the realization of the fact. You know, we indeed can fly over mountains and seas, we can talk at great distance, we can see the invisible. So, and man becomes equal to God. There's an increasing omniscience, omnipotence in And there Freud uses this really wonderful phrase. He says, Mensch ist ein Prothesengott. Man is a prosthetic God. So, prosthetic God. So, man is like God, but only if he has all these prostheses at hand. So, it's godlike as long as he is endowed with the prostheses. So, our divinity, our divine power, resides in prostheses, in protheses. So it's like divinity on crutches. We are like God but with crutches. We need all these gadgets and then we are godlike. And a man without the prosthesis is not a man. Like the prosthesis makes a man. Prosthesis is essential. And now, okay, this may seem like commonplace, so this can be taken for granted, but there is a subplot in this. There is a subplot already in this. And the subplot is the connection between technology and the drives. Now, how to conceive the drive? A lot depends on the question of how exactly to conceive the drive. And let me take up two different models. One which subtends most of Freud's text, but not all of them, and the other one which Lacan tried to implement. The first model to understand the drive is the energetic model. So the drive is a sort of amount of energy, a reservoir of libido. It's a reservoir. There's a sort of somatic pressure to be released. And there is a sort of energy which is dammed up and then seeks release. It has to be discharged. So damming up of energy and the discharge. This is the energetic model. You somehow understand this as a reservoir, damming up, discharge.